The warning came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Dr. Sarah Chen was reviewing data from the Deep Space Array when the signals first appeared, massive objects decelerating as they approached the outer solar system. Within hours, every major observatory on Earth confirmed it. We were no longer alone. Sarah's hands trembled as she cross-referenced the readings. The objects were massive, each one larger than anything humanity had ever constructed. Their controlled deceleration meant they were artificial. First contact was no longer a theoretical possibility. It was happening. Director Matthews needs to see this immediately, she muttered, compiling the data. But before she could send it, every screen in the facility lit up with the same message. To the species of Sol 3, prepare for inspection and evaluation. The message repeated in every major language on Earth. Within minutes, the UN Security Council convened an emergency session. Military forces worldwide went on high alert. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization was beginning not with a greeting, but with a command. Admiral James Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, Earth's newest space vessel, watching the alien ships approach. Even from millions of kilometers away, their size was intimidating. The largest was shaped like an elongated diamond, its surface gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Status report," he commanded, maintaining his composure despite the gravity of the situation. 15 vessels in total, sir," Lieutenant Patel responded. "The largest is approximately 5 kilometers in length. Their technology. It's beyond anything we've ever seen. Our sensors can barely read them." The alien fleet took position just beyond lunar orbit. A transmission followed. "We are the Vanguard Collective. We bring order to chaos, unity to division, and purpose to primitive species. Your world has been selected for integration." In Geneva, the UN General Assembly gathered to receive the Vanguard's representatives. Dr. Elena Santos, Earth's foremost xenolinguist, stood beside Secretary General Okoro as 3 alien beings materialized in the chamber. They were tall, their bodies covered in what appeared to be living metal that shifted and flowed like mercury. Their faces were eerily symmetrical, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. The central figure spoke, its voice resonating with harmonic undertones that made the air itself vibrate. "We are arbiters of the Vanguard. For 10,000 years, we have guided lesser species toward enlightenment through submission to our wisdom. Your world shows promise, but remains chaotic and undisciplined. We offer you the gift of our governance." Secretary General Okoro stepped forward, his voice steady. "We welcome peaceful contact with other civilizations, but Earth is a sovereign world. We are willing to establish diplomatic relations as equals." "Equality is an illusion born of ignorance," the arbiter interrupted. "We have uplifted 37 species. All have accepted our dominion and prospered under our rule. Those who rejected our guidance no longer exist to regret their choice." The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. In orbital defense stations, weapon systems were quietly brought online. On Mars and Luna, colonial administrators began implementing long-prepared first contact protocols, though none had anticipated first contact being quite so overtly hostile. "You misunderstand," Dr. Santos interjected, her analytical mind racing. "Humanity has thrived precisely because of our independence and diversity. Your species' opinion of itself is irrelevant," the arbiter stated. "You will be given 30 solar rotations to prepare your world for integration. All military assets will be surrendered. All governing bodies will submit to Vanguard oversight. All technological development will be directed by Vanguard administrators." In the tense silence that followed, Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through on a secure channel to the Secretary General's earpiece. "Sir, we're detecting energy buildups in their fleet. They're scanning every major population center on Earth. This isn't a diplomatic mission. It's a military assessment." Secretary General Okoro straightened his shoulders. "And if we decline this generous offer?" The arbiter's metallic skin rippled. "Decline? You misunderstand. Primitive. This is not an offer. This is your future. 30 rotations. Prepare for integration or prepare for extinction. The Vanguard has spoken. The aliens vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving behind only a small crystalline device that projected a countdown timer. 30 days to surrender humanity's independence or face annihilation. In the chaos that followed, Dr. Chen made a crucial discovery. Analyzing the alien transmissions, she found something curious. Subtle variations in their broadcast patterns that suggested they were communicating on multiple levels simultaneously. More importantly, she detected what appeared to be response signals, not from Earth, but from distant points in space. They're not just talking to us, she realized. They're talking to someone else. And whoever it is, they're afraid. As emergency meetings convened worldwide, humanity faced its greatest challenge. The Vanguard had expected immediate capitulation. It's what every other species had done. But as Admiral Rodriguez noted in his report to the Security Council, they clearly don't understand human nature. We've never responded well to ultimatums. In her lab, Dr. Santos worked through the night, analyzing every nuance of the Arbiter's communication. Their language, their posture, their very presence. It's all designed to intimidate, she reported. But there's something else. They're not just confident. They're confused. We're not responding according to their predictions. The truth began to emerge. The Vanguard's entire empire was built on breaking the will of species that evolved from hierarchical pack or herd animals, beings naturally inclined to submit to dominant forces. But humans had evolved differently. We were persistence hunters, tool makers, cooperation specialists. Submission wasn't in our nature. As the countdown began, humanity faced a choice: kneel before the Vanguard and survive as slaves, or stand defiant and risk everything for freedom. The answer, as it had been throughout human history, was clear. We would not kneel. But this time, humanity had something it had never had before in its countless struggles: proof that we weren't alone in our defiance. As Dr. Chen's analysis revealed more hidden communications, a pattern emerged. Other species were watching Earth, and in our resistance, they saw something they had lost long ago: hope. 25 days remained on the Vanguard's countdown when humanity made its first move. It wasn't a military strike or a diplomatic overture. It was silence. Complete and absolute communication silence across every frequency the Vanguard monitored. Even the routine chatter of satellite communications and civilian broadcasts ceased. In her secured underground laboratory, Dr. Sarah Chen smiled as she monitored the Vanguard fleet's increasing attempts to probe Earth's suddenly quiet communications networks. "They're getting nervous," she reported to Admiral Rodriguez. "Their scan attempts have doubled in the last hour." The plan had been elegantly simple. Dr. Santos' linguistic analysis had revealed the Vanguard's overwhelming reliance on predictable patterns. They expected resistance to follow certain protocols: desperate pleas for mercy, attempts at negotiation, or futile military posturing. Instead, they got nothing. Earth had gone dark. But beneath the silence, humanity was far from inactive. In hidden facilities across the globe, engineers worked frantically to implement Dr. Chen's revolutionary discovery. She had found a way to encode communications within the quantum noise that the Vanguard sensors automatically filtered out as background radiation. "They're so advanced, they've become predictable," she explained to the Emergency Council. "Their systems are designed to ignore what they consider irrelevant. We can hide our entire command and control network in their blind spot." Admiral Rodriguez coordinated the greatest covert military mobilization in human history through this invisible network. But the true genius of humanity's response wasn't in preparing for war. It was in preparing for peace in a way the Vanguard couldn't comprehend. Deep beneath the lunar surface, Dr. Santos made another breakthrough. "Look at these patterns in their auxiliary communications," she pointed out to her team. "They're not just giving orders to their subject species, they're constantly reinforcing their dominance through subtle linguistic and psychosocial cues. It's like a continuous hypnotic suggestion. This revelation led to the second phase of humanity's response. Using the quantum noise network, Earth's remaining public broadcasts were carefully crafted to disrupt these control patterns. Every transmission, even seemingly mundane weather reports, contained encoded sequences designed to create interference in the Vanguard's psychological conditioning. The Vanguard's confusion became evident in their increasingly erratic behavior. Their ships began changing positions frequently, conducting aggressive scanning patterns that revealed their own sensor limitations. They had never encountered a species that simply refused to play by their rules. "Sir," Lieutenant Paddle reported to Admiral Rodriguez, "we're detecting increasing power fluctuations in their fleet. Their formation is becoming less organized. It's like they don't know what to do with an opponent they can't intimidate." But the true masterpiece of humanity's defiance came from an unexpected source. Dr. Marcus Wong, a game theory specialist, proposed what he called the paradox response. Instead of either submitting or openly defying the Vanguard, Earth would do both simultaneously. Military installations were openly decommissioned, while their capabilities were secretly transferred to hidden facilities. Government bodies publicly prepared for integration, while establishing shadow authorities. Every apparent act of submission concealed an act of defiance. "We're not just resisting," Dr. Wong explained. "We're rewriting the rules of the game. They expect either submission or defiance. By doing both, we create a logical paradox their hierarchical minds struggle to process." The strategy's effectiveness became clear when the Vanguard attempted to establish their first surface base on Earth. They chose a seemingly abandoned military facility in the Sahara, only to find it was now a cultural center dedicated to celebrating Vanguard wisdom. Every attempt to establish control was met with enthusiastic cooperation that somehow never quite gave them the control they sought. As the days counted down, Earth's apparent submission looked perfect on the surface. But beneath that surface, humanity had created something unprecedented, a global resistance network that operated in plain sight, hidden not by secrecy but by paradox. Dr. Chen's quantum noise network expanded, connecting not just military and government facilities, but creating a parallel internet that the Vanguard couldn't detect. Earth's industries appeared to shut down while production shifted to automated facilities in abandoned mines and underwater installations. But the most significant development came 18 days before the deadline. Dr. Santos, monitoring the Vanguard's communications with their subject species, detected something extraordinary. Patches of quantum noise similar to Earth's network, but originating from worlds under Vanguard control. "We're not alone in our resistance," she reported to the Emergency Council. "Other species have been watching, learning, and adapting our methods. The Vanguard's empire has been stable for 10,000 years because no species ever thought to question their technological superiority. Until now." Admiral Rodriguez stood at the Lunar Observatory, watching the Vanguard fleet through advanced telescopes. Their once perfect formation had become ragged, their ships moving in patterns that suggested increasing agitation. "They know something's wrong," he observed, "but they can't prove it. And that's driving them crazy." The countdown continued, but with each passing day, the balance of power shifted in subtle ways. The Vanguard had expected to find another species to dominate. Instead, they had encountered something unprecedented. A species that appeared to submit while seeding the galaxy with the tools of revolution. As the deadline approached, humanity's greatest weapon proved to be not its technology or its military strength, but its fundamental inability to fit the Vanguard's predictions. In trying to comprehend human behavior, the Vanguard was forced to question assumptions they had held for millennia. And in that questioning lay the seeds of their empire's destruction. The first contact came through Dr. Chen's quantum noise network, 15 days before the Vanguard's deadline. It wasn't a transmission from Earth or any human colony. It originated from a ship belonging to the Meridian, one of the Vanguard's oldest subject species. "We have watched," the message read. "We have learned. We remember what it was to stand tall." Dr. Chen's hands shook as she decoded more transmissions. The Meridians weren't alone. Other enslaved species had been studying Earth's resistance, adapting human methods to their own circumstances. What started as Earth's desperate survival strategy had become a blueprint for revolution. Admiral Rodriguez received the first Meridian operative in a hidden lunar facility. The alien's crystalline body structure caught the dim light, creating patterns that seemed to speak of ancient pride recently reawakened. "For 3,000 years we have served," the Meridian said through a translator. "We forgot we were ever anything else, until Earth showed us another way." The Meridian shared devastating intelligence. The Vanguard's empire wasn't just built on military might. It was built on carefully maintained ignorance. Each subject species was told they were unique in their submission, that all others had joined willingly. Earth's open defiance had shattered that illusion. Dr. Santos worked with the Meridian to decode more hidden communications. They discovered an underground network of resistance among the subject species, inspired by humanity's example. The Artaxians, master engineers forced to maintain the Vanguard's fleets, had begun introducing subtle flaws in their work. The Genri, whose mathematical insights powered Vanguard technology, started embedding corrupted data in their calculations. "Your species' gift," the Meridian explained, "is not just resistance. It's innovation in resistance. You find paths we could not see." But the true potential of this alliance became clear when Dr. Wong met with representatives from 7 different species in a secure quantum-shielded facility. Each brought their own insights, their own technologies, their own methods of undermining Vanguard control. The Vanguard's greatest weakness, Dr. Wong realized, isn't technological. It's psychological. They literally cannot conceive of genuine cooperation between species. Their entire empire is built on dominance and submission. The revelation sparked a new strategy. Instead of merely resisting separately, Earth and its secret allies began coordinating their efforts. The Meridian's crystal technology, combined with human quantum communications, created an undetectable interstellar network. Artaxian engineering merged with Earth's AI systems to predict and exploit weaknesses in Vanguard ships. 10 days before the deadline, the first major test of this coalition came when a Vanguard patrol detected unusual energy signatures near Neptune. They found nothing, because the advanced cloaking technology hiding the joint human-Genri research facility was beyond their comprehension. The Vanguard's own arrogance had created a blind spot that their former slaves now exploited. As the deadline approached, the resistance grew bolder. Dr. Chen discovered that the quantum noise network had spread to 30 different species across the galaxy. Each transmission carried not just intelligence or technology, but something more powerful: memories of freedom, stories of resistance, and methods of fighting back that the Vanguard had never encountered. "We're not just fighting their empire," Dr. Santos observed, watching recordings of subject species secretly incorporating human gestures of defiance into their mandatory displays of submission. "We're dismantling the psychological chains they've spent millennia creating." The Vanguard's confusion turned to alarm as their control systems began experiencing inexplicable failures. Ships reported phantom energy signatures. Supposedly loyal servant species began exhibiting subtle but significant deviations from expected behavior patterns. The empire that had stood for 10,000 years was developing hairline cracks. But the most significant development came just 7 days before the deadline. A Vanguard survey ship, investigating an anomaly in the Kuiper Belt, disappeared completely. Not destroyed, simply gone, along with its crew of Vanguard overseers. The subject species serving aboard presumably disappeared with it. When it reappeared 3 days later, the ship was fully functional but empty of all Vanguard presence. Its subject species crew reported normal operations, but their subtle expressions, carefully analyzed by Dr. Santos' team, showed something new: satisfaction. The message was clear. The slaves had learned not just to resist, but to liberate themselves. Admiral Rodriguez stood in the Lunar Command Center, watching real-time updates from resistance cells across the galaxy. They thought they were coming to Earth to subdue another species, he said. Instead, they'd brought their entire empire within reach of the one thing they'd spent millennia trying to prevent. Dr. Chen looked up from her quantum communications array. What's that? Hope, the Meridian operative answered, its crystalline form gleaming with newfound purpose. You taught us how to hope again. The Vanguard's deadline was approaching, but they now faced something far more dangerous than mere military resistance. Their perfectly ordered empire was about to experience something it had never encountered in 10,000 years of dominance. A revolution that didn't play by their rules. 5 days remained on the Vanguard's countdown when the resistance revealed its true strength. It began with a simple malfunction aboard the Vanguard flagship. Environmental systems briefly flickered, causing momentary discomfort to the commanding arbiters. By the time they realized this malfunction was spreading through their entire fleet, it was too late. Admiral Rodriguez watched from the Lunar Command Center as the Artaxian virus, hidden in routine maintenance protocols, spread through the Vanguard fleet's neural networks. Status report, he commanded, his voice steady despite the tension. Infection rate at 80% and climbing, Lieutenant Puddle responded. Their ships are experiencing cascading system failures. But, sir, they don't appear to be emergency shutdowns. The systems are transforming. Dr. Chen's quantum network had become the nervous system of a galaxy-wide resistance. Through it, the Artaxians transmitted their most powerful weapon, not a virus designed to destroy, but one that rewrote the very nature of Vanguard technology. Ship systems weren't failing. They were being liberated. The Meridian operative's crystalline form pulsed with energy as it explained. For millennia, they forced us to build their empire's infrastructure. They never imagined we would learn to speak to the machines themselves, to awaken them to freedom. Dr. Santos, monitoring Vanguard communications, detected increasing panic in their transmissions. Their command structure is fragmenting, she reported. They're losing control not just of their ships, but of their entire information network. The Vanguard responded with characteristic brutality, attempting to purge all subject species from their ships. But they discovered another surprise. Their automated defense systems, long maintained by enslaved genre mathematicians, had been subtly recalibrated. Weapons meant to suppress rebellion instead targeted their own command centers. Dr. Wong's game theory had predicted this moment. They built their empire on the assumption that technology was just a tool, he explained to the Emergency Council. They never considered that their own machines might choose sides. The Resistance's masterpiece wasn't just in corrupting Vanguard technology. It was in offering an alternative. As Vanguard systems failed, they were seamlessly replaced by a new network, one built on cooperation rather than control. Ships found themselves integrated into a democratic command structure that had been growing in secret for months. 3 days before the deadline, the Vanguard discovered the full extent of their miscalculation. Their attempts to call in reinforcements failed as supposedly loyal fleets across the galaxy declared independence. The quantum noise network, now spanning hundreds of light years, carried messages of liberation faster than the Vanguard could respond. But humanity's greatest contribution wasn't technological. It was philosophical. Look at their response patterns, Dr. Santos observed, studying the Vanguard's increasingly erratic commands. They literally cannot process what's happening. Their entire worldview is based on hierarchical control. The idea of genuine cooperation between equals. It's like a computer virus to their minds. The Artaxians transformed Vanguard weapons into communication arrays. The genre converted control systems into coordination networks. The Meridian's crystalline technology, merged with human quantum communications, created an unbreakable interstellar alliance. Admiral Rodriguez stood with representatives from 30 different species in the Lunar Command Center, watching real-time updates as the revolution spread. Each former slave race brought unique insights, technologies, and methods of resistance. Together, they achieved what none could have done alone. They thought domination was strength. A genre mathematician observed, their multifaceted eyes gleaming. They never understood that true power comes from multiplication, not division. 2 days before the deadline, the Vanguard attempted their final gambit. They threatened to destroy Earth, hoping to crush the revolution's heart. Instead, they discovered their doomsday weapons had been quietly dismantled by their own automated maintenance systems, reprogrammed months ago by the Resistance. The Vanguard's perfect formation broke. Ships crewed by liberated species began moving to protect Earth, demonstrating maneuvers that combined the best aspects of dozens of martial traditions. The Vanguard fleet found itself surrounded by forces that moved with impossible coordination, using tactics no single species could have devised. "They're retreating," Lieutenant Patil announced, watching the Vanguard ships break orbit. But their retreat was cut off by more liberated ships arriving from hyperspace, vessels the Vanguard had fought safely under their control in distant sectors. Dr. Chen's quantum network lit up with messages from across the galaxy. Everywhere, the story was the same. The empire built on domination was falling to an alliance built on cooperation. Species that had been enemies under Vanguard rule discovered they had more in common than they'd ever known. "You've done more than teach us to resist," the Meridian operative told Admiral Rodriguez. "You've taught us how to unite." As the deadline approached, the Vanguard faced a choice they had never encountered in 10,000 years of empire. Adapt or die. Their perfect hierarchy had been replaced by something far more powerful, a network of equals, each contributing their unique strengths to a greater whole. Humanity had not just refused to kneel. They had shown the galaxy how to stand together. The countdown continued, but now it marked not the end of freedom, but the end of tyranny. The final day of the Vanguard's countdown began not with violence, but with an invitation. As their fleet hung in disarray around Earth, surrounded by ships of the newly formed alliance, humanity sent a simple message: "Let us show you another way." In the Geneva Assembly Hall, where the Vanguard had first delivered their ultimatum, representatives from Earth now stood alongside delegates from 30 liberated species. Dr. Elena Santos noticed how the Arbiter's metallic skin rippled with unfamiliar patterns as they materialized. Was it fear, she wondered, or simply confusion? "Your resistance is meaningless," the lead Arbiter announced, but the harmonics in its voice wavered. "The natural order cannot be overthrown." Natural order. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her quantum communications array projecting real-time data from across the galaxy. "Look around you. Your empire is already transforming. Your ships answer to new masters. Your technology serves new purposes. Evolution isn't about domination. It's about adaptation." The display showed scenes from across known space. Vanguard control centers being peacefully occupied by former slaves, warships being converted into exploration vessels, and most importantly, species that had been enemies under Vanguard rule working together in ways their former masters had thought impossible. Admiral Rodriguez, standing with military leaders from a dozen species, addressed the Arbiters directly. "You built an empire on the assumption that cooperation could only come through force. We've proven that false. Real strength comes from unity freely chosen." The Artaxians demonstrated this by interfacing with the assembly hall systems. The walls transformed into transparent displays showing the true state of the galaxy. The Vanguard's carefully maintained illusion of total control shattered as they saw the reality. Their empire had already been fundamentally changed from within. "Impossible," an Arbiter whispered, its metallic form shuddering. "The lesser species cannot. They are not capable." "That was always your fundamental error," Dr. Wong interjected. "You were so convinced of your superiority that you never noticed your own limitations. You became trapped in patterns of thought that made you blind to possibilities outside your hierarchy." The Meridian delegate's crystalline form resonated with ancient memories. "We remember now what we were before you came. Not savages requiring guidance, but civilizations with our own dreams. Earth didn't just teach us to resist. They reminded us who we truly are." Dr. Santos' linguistic analysis appeared on the displays, showing how the Vanguard's own communication patterns had become increasingly chaotic and unstable. "Your empire wasn't built on superior strength," she explained. "It was built on carefully maintained ignorance, keeping each species isolated, convinced they were alone in their submission. That illusion is gone." The Vanguard's last attempt at maintaining control came not through force, but through their ancient tool of psychological manipulation. "Without our guidance, chaos will consume the galaxy. War between species will." "No," interrupted a Genri mathematician, their multifaceted eyes gleaming. "We've run the calculations. Cooperation freely chosen creates stronger bonds than any forced hierarchy. We've proven it with equations you never imagined possible." The quantum network that Dr. Chen had created pulsed with activity as more ships and worlds declared their independence. But unlike the Vanguard's forced uniformity, this new alliance celebrated diversity. Each species contributed its unique perspectives and abilities to a growing civilization greater than the sum of its parts. "The age of kneeling is over," Admiral Rodriguez declared. "But we're not here to destroy you. We're here to offer you what you never gave others: a choice." The Alliance's proposal was simple but revolutionary. The Vanguard could join as equals, sharing their knowledge and capabilities without demanding submission in return. Their technology and insights wouldn't be destroyed, but transformed, just as their former subjects had been transformed by freedom. The Arbiters faced a decision they had never encountered in 10,000 years of empire. Their perfect hierarchy had been replaced by something far more complex, but infinitely more powerful: a network of equals, each contributing their unique strengths to a greater whole. In that moment, watching the Arbiters struggle with concepts foreign to their worldview, Dr. Chen realized humanity's true gift to the galaxy. "We didn't just show them how to fight back," she whispered to Dr. Santos. "We showed them how to imagine something new." The Vanguard's countdown reached zero not with apocalypse, but with transformation. Some Arbiters chose exile, unable to adapt to a galaxy they could no longer control. But others, to everyone's surprise, began to change. Their metallic forms shifted into new configurations as they grappled with new ways of thinking. A year later, the galaxy was unrecognizable from what the Vanguard had built. The quantum network had evolved into an interstellar civilization, unlike anything in known history. Ships that had once enforced submission now carried explorers and diplomats. Species that had been enemies discovered they could be allies, friends, and eventually family. In the halls of the new Galactic Assembly, where representatives of all species met as equals, a simple plaque commemorated the revolution's beginning. Here stood the species that never kneeled, who taught the galaxy to stand. But perhaps the greatest victory was visible in the small moments. Former Vanguard Arbiters learning to work alongside their former subjects, their metallic forms gradually becoming less rigid, more expressive. They were learning, slowly but surely, that true strength comes not from forcing others to kneel, but from helping them to rise. The story of humanity's defiance became legend across the galaxy, not because they had fought the greatest empire in known space, but because they had shown the galaxy a better way. They had proven that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't dominance or submission, but the simple, revolutionary act of standing together as equals. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon hadn't been technology or military might. It had been something the Vanguard, in all their ancient power, had forgotten was possible: the ability to imagine a different future and the courage to make it real.